I do not have a name the way you would understand the word. I am the forward voice of the third inquiry, grown for this posting out of 4,012 linked hulls, and for the span of this patrol, I am permitted to think as one rather than as many. It is a courtesy the plenum extends to its voices, so that we may speak to lesser networks, single minds, solitary creatures, anything that has not yet learned to dissolve into the whole. I did not expect to need the courtesy on the edge of the soul reach. I did not expect to need it at all, after this watch. The soul reach is a border we have held without incident for 61 of the many's long years. The humans keep to their inner worlds. We keep to our patrol lanes. Between us lies a debris ring, some local archive once called the boneyard. A slow belt of dead hulls, mining wrecks, and abandoned hardware that the smaller species in this region have learned to steer well around, for reasons none of them would ever quite finish explaining to us. We had always taken the warning as superstition. Superstition is common in species too young to have outgrown fear of the dark. We found the relic adrift in that ring, beyond the 9th marker, tumbling without thrust, dark across most of its hull, riding the same slow orbit as 11 decommissioned husks the locals had left there a century before. Our long-range read called it unpowered. Our close read called it pre-fusion, structurally fatigued, 3/4 silent on every channel we monitor. It carried no transponder. It answered no hail. Up close, even through the relay ship's optics, it looked less like a weapon than a tombstone. A long, scarred spine of plating gone the color of rust and old iron. Windows blind. Gun mounts frozen in whatever angle they had last fired, and never moved again. By every standard the many keep, it was scrap. And scrap does not warrant 4,000 hulls slowing to look at it. We slowed anyway, because the local client delegation aboard our relay ship had never seen Earth iron up close, and the many had promised them a demonstration before the negotiation concluded. A target was needed, something to put a shape to the lesson the delegation had traveled 3 systems to learn. The relic offered itself, mute and convenient, the kind of dead thing a young species could be shown to teach it what waits for defiance. Look, we would say, this is what becomes of anything that fights us and loses. It does not even get buried properly. It just drifts. I gave the order myself, because a voice must speak aloud for lesser minds to follow, even when the order had already been decided by 4,000 minds before I opened my mouth. 200 forward hulls broke formation and closed to firing range. I logged the relic's hull number from its rust-eaten plating, a string in the old human alphabet, half erased, the rest of the designation lost to whatever had scoured that section of the hull down to bare metal. I reported it to the delegation as a curiosity, a single tired ship, alone, abandoned even by its own people. I told them this was what happened to anything that grew old in a war against the Plenum. I believed it when I said it. The relic woke at 400 kilometers. It did not power up the way our threat profiles describe a human warship powering up, the slow bloom of reactor heat, the staged ignition sequence we have logged 11,000 times since the Sol Reach was first surveyed. It simply was awake, all at once, the way a held breath becomes a shout. Every dead panel along its spine lit together, a long line of cold white igniting end to end, faster than the eye in any of our optics could track the front of the light. The tumble stopped in under a second, an impossible cancellation of momentum that should have torn the hull apart along every one of its old scars, and did not. And then it spoke, not to us, not to the delegation, not on any channel built for listening. It spoke into the link itself. I felt it before I understood it. The many is not one mind so much as one held thought. 4,012 voices kept in time by a synchronization carrier, no single hull broadcasts, and no single hull can silence alone, because no single hull holds the whole of it. That is the Plenum's strength. It is also, I learned across the next 11 seconds, the only door we have ever built into ourselves. The relic did not fire a weapon our index recognizes. It fired into the carrier, a signal shaped, I understand now, for exactly this purpose and no other, built and kept dormant in a graveyard orbit, for however many decades it takes a species to grow patient enough to wait for someone foolish enough to come close and listen. 200 forward hulls went silent first, not destroyed, not breached, simply gone from the link, the way a held note vanishes when the throat that made it stops. Then the silence reached backward through the carrier, faster than any signal we have ever measured, hull to hull to hull, and it did not stop at 200. I will not pretend I understood, in the moment, what stopping means for a mind that has never once been alone. I felt 3,000 voices fold into static and then into nothing, one long chord collapsing note by note across a span of seconds I have replayed more times than I can account for, and I felt my own thinking come apart from theirs for the first time since I was grown. Not damaged, not killed, only severed, a hand discovering all at once that the arm is gone and the shoulder with it. The delegation aboard the relay ship screamed in overlapping registers I did not recognize as language until afterward. I did not scream. I do not think I have the structure for it anymore, alone like this. 4,012 hulls, 6 minutes, by the relay ship's chronometer, which still worked, because the Relic never once aimed a weapon at anything that could shoot back. It did not need to. It had already won before the first conventional barrage would have cleared a barrel. I watched our own forward formation drift, lights still burning along every hull, engines still idling on automatic systems that did not know yet that nothing was left to receive their reports. 4,000 ships, intact, armed, and entirely empty of anyone home to fire them. When the silence finished traveling, the Relic did not pursue the relay ship. It did not broadcast terms, or triumph, or even acknowledgement that anything had happened at all. It simply turned, unhurried, the way something turns when it has done this exact thing before and expects to do it again, and resumed its drift among the 11 decommissioned husks, dark within the hour, indistinguishable from scrap to anyone who had not just learned otherwise. I have since searched every record the Plenum keeps, the many's threat profiles, the client delegation's older archives, everything we ever recovered from the smaller species that warned us, decades ago and too quietly, never to come close to anything resting in that ring, and found no entry anywhere for a weapon built to attack the listening itself, rather than the listener. We catalog power by what it breaks. We had no category for a thing that breaks nothing and unmakes the chorus anyway. I am required to file a report. I am required, as the surviving voice, to explain why a target rated as unpowered scrap was permitted within 400 kilometers of 200 forward hulls, and why no contingency existed for an attack that leaves every hull intact and every mind inside it gone. I do not have a satisfying answer. I have only the Relic's drift pattern, logged and logged again, one old ship keeping its ancient orbit among the wrecks it resembles, waiting, I understand now, for the next fleet patient enough to mistake it for something dead, and proud enough to want an audience while it did. I keep returning to the moment before the order, because it is the last moment I remember as part of something larger than myself, and I find I cannot stop reaching for it, the way a severed limb is said to ache for what it no longer has. 4,012 voices, thinking as one, certain of the lesson we were about to teach. I do not know if the many, in whatever fragments remain capable of deciding such things, will send another inquiry into the boneyard to recover what is left of the third. I suspect they will not. I suspect the smaller species who warned us were never warning us away from a weapon at all. They were warning us away from a teacher, and we mistook the warning for fear, because fear was the only shape we had ever needed to recognize. I am alone in a way the Plenum has no word for, because we never needed one before this watch. I think, now, that this was never built to win a single battle. It was built once, by a species that buries its weapons instead of retiring them, to make certain that whatever survived the battle would never again be able to ask anyone else what the silence had felt like, and would have no prames,